You've probably never heard of the Waler, but you might know it by its other names. The bush horse, the light horse. This tough little breed carried many Aussie diggers into battle during the First World War, and when there was no further use for them, they were released into Central Australia. Everyone assumed these wild Walers had died out until a couple of years ago when they were rediscovered. A wonderful bloodline, a horse breeder's dream. But now the Walers are threatened, ironically by a government scheme to rid the territory of all wild horses. Now, as you can imagine, some parts of this report are tough to take, but there's hope in the end that we will, at last, save the Walers. Australian horses running wild and free through the heart of the country. Today, there's close to 300,000 of them. By 1992, they'll all be gone.
We're talking about feral horses. They're wild animals. It's like a pack of dogs.
Amongst these brumbies is a group of horses which once were the nation's pride. They're called Walers. In their day, they were the best cavalry horse in the world. They carried the Anzacs into war. They fought in the deserts. They never tired, never gave up. And unless someone starts to care about them, these one-time war heroes, this could be their fate. In Darwin, on the fringes of Waler country, brumbies are being slaughtered in a controversial government-backed campaign. And there's the horrifying prospect that the helicopters will soon turn south to kill off the last of the Walers.
They are the first Australian breed, and they're Australia's war horses. So I think they deserve to be kept around.
Darwin horse breeder Bonnie Palmer is struggling to persuade her fellow Territorians that these horses, these Walers, are special.
Yes, and there are people waiting for them. There are people down south that have been waiting years for horses to come out of the territory so that they can do something with them.
They've gone wild, and they got all the cunning of their breed, plus, you know, and none of the good traits.
Jim Turner was born and reared a cattleman. For him, horses, all wild horses, are nothing but a blight.
It's ridiculous.
What's ridiculous?
To say that we saved these wild horses.
This is Waler country, the Harts Ranges in Central Australia. The Walers were bred here when they were in big demand, and they were released here to run wild with the brumbies when their usefulness had ended. They've interbred now for 30, perhaps 40 years, but partly because they were such true Walers, partly because of the desert which surrounds this country, the true Waler stock has never died out. This is the last place in Australia you'll find them. In the race to catch the Walers before the shooters get to them, the country itself is part of the problem. It's as wild as the horses themselves. Somewhere between 300 and 1,000 Walers still run here, and though they look much the same as the ordinary brumbies, a trained eye can always tell.
They have a large square head like a thoroughbred. They have a very broad neck and deep chest, and very strong back. They're intelligent horses. If you throw a rope on them and start working them, you're kind to them, they'll be kind to you. They're not pig-headed.
Very curious too.
Well, a Waler is only a type of horse, a class of horse. He's not a distinct breed. So he's only a brumby, isn't he?
Dick Cadzow owns Mount Riddick Station, one of the first and best of the Waler breeding properties in the ranges. It's cattle country now. The wild horses are gone, and Dick Cadzow's determined they won't be back. I mean, do you think it makes Australia look pretty bad to be seen to be slaughtering all these horses?
Well, it all depends on how you look at the horses. They're only another resource, aren't they? If they're no good, get rid of it. put cattle or whatever in its place.
This is the final solution, Darwin style. 9 brumbies, including a foal, running for their lives. Against this, they can't win. Locally, they call it cleaning out a paddock. Anyone would call it a bloody business.
Their men are actually trained and trained properly. They do a course, a firearms course every year, and they're very good shots.
Not that good. People, I mean, the horses still suffer.
Oh, well, people in Iran are suffering too, aren't they? Or anywhere else in the world. I mean, it's not only an animal that's suffering from being shot, is it?
Around Darwin, they insist that shooting, not trapping, is the most humane way to destroy horses. They say it takes just one clean shot. Your eyes tell you different. When scenes like this were screened in Europe a few months ago, the International Court of Animal Rights in Geneva condemned a cruel and barbaric massacre. Australia was judged and found guilty. The territory cattlemen scoffed. What about how it makes Australia look internationally? I mean, you know...
Oh, that's a joke. You talk about the Geneva court. Give us stuff about Geneva. They can't even make a decent watch these days.
Australian Light Horse Patrol, sir.
It's not the Australian whalers' first time in the international spotlight. They served with the British in India, later with the diggers in Egypt and Palestine. Bred for battle, they combined the speed of the thoroughbred, the endurance of the Arab, and the strength of the draft horse.
They just kept on going. They'd load them up, they'd have no water, you know, they'd go day after day, and they'd keep on going. They wouldn't get shaking at the knee and fall over, and in the last charge, mate, they'd still keep going. So if you want to ever breed whalers again, that's where you'd want to grab those horses and use them, because they have the original breeding in them.
Once the country could handle them both, cattle and horse. Nowadays, though, there's a new factor, disease. The federal government has given all cattlemen in the territory 4 years to eradicate TB and brucellosis from their herds. If they fail, they're finished. Every animal on a contaminated property will be shot. The wild horse is the biggest obstacle.
Oh, well, you can't clean up your place for disease. If you could put in new fences, horses gallop through it and break the fences down, and then you got your clean cattle box with your dirty cattle.
It's the cattlemen's strongest argument for destroying the horses, that if they don't, the horses will end up destroying them. And in this country, horse means both Brumby scrubber and Waler.
They're the enemy. They're worse than the rabbit, they're worse than the dingo.
What about the Walers? I mean, that's one of the big arguments, though, why the horses shouldn't be shot, that you're killing off the Walers.
Well, that's all bunkum, because for a start, most of the horses here aren't Walers. There are some, naturally.
Do you think they are special? I mean, do you acknowledge they are?
No, they're not special when they're wild. They're just as bad as any other wild horse.
These horses are very special for some people. I mean,
not very special for Italians and Central Europeans. They love them to eat.
But I mean, if these Walers aren't saved, they say the whole breed will be destroyed.
They say, but that's all bullshit.
Whatever the cattlemen say, Kerry Jarvis is one person with no doubts about Australia's own horse. So. In fact, she's come from Hobart to Alice Springs specifically to save the Waler. Which of these would you be interested in taking?
Oh, probably just 2 or 3. That little dark one over there that's not very old, and that grey one at the back. And I think that one with the star on its forehead.
As co-founder of the Australian Waler Society, Kerry Jarvis is prepared to do almost anything for the horses. Over the wishes of her own family, she's even selling her farm to finance a last-ditch attempt to keep the Waler breed alive.
The horses mean that much to us that we're prepared to make some sacrifices for them.
Some sacrifices? I mean, your kids have left home, your property's on the market. Is it all worth it for these Walers?
Yes, it is. I'm interested in buying a few. You know, there's a couple out there of those ones out there that I'd like to get hold of if I could. I'd like
Requests that property owners help save the Waler get answers like this.
Look, at times you feel like hanging them. I've seen RSPCA poor misguided souls come over and they drive you up the wall.
This is Kerry Jarvis's second trip to Alice. Last year she bought 17 Walers and found homes for them all. This year she's after 300, enough to enable the breed to live on. How many Walers would you say had been shot already?
Thousands. Too many to count, I wouldn't know. A lot.
How many would you say are left?
Enough. There's enough for us to breed if we can get them. It's just getting them, that's the problem.
Good horses, bad horses. They're all the same to the pet food trade. At $100 a carcass, shooters and skinners like Ray Mayo believe that's all they're good for.
Well, these horses are worthless. It's good for nothing, only for eating grass and eating feed the cattle could be eating.
Maybe it'd make a good pony for a child. Maybe.
It'll never ever make a child's pony. Once they're wild like this, you'll never ever tame them.
Those people who argue that the Territory's wild horses are useless, that they're not worth the effort of training, clearly haven't met Condamine. She's a Waler. She was found running with a wild herd at the Harts Ranges out near Alice Springs. She's been broken just 6 months and already she's a perfect riding horse. She's strong enough to pull a cart and docile enough to have young kids on her back. And these are precisely the sort of animals who are being shot and trapped and driven into the knackeries.
We're not barbaric. Most people love their horses. It's hard to get through. That's the trouble with Australia. With 16 million people and 14 million or 15 million live in bloody side of the cities. They never even know a horse. We've had to shoot horses over the years, perishing horses, horses bogged in dams, horses bogged in quicksand. I've had a gutful of shooting horses.
The tragedy is that what's happening around Darwin is not what even the gruffest, toughest cattlemen in Alice Springs want for their horses. They want them gone, but not gunned down. But it's been too good a season. The country's too green, there's plenty of water and the horses won't be trapped. Unless things change, they'll be shooting here before the end of the year. Is this their last chance?
I hope not, but time is running out. It definitely is running out as far as we're concerned. There just won't be enough good horses to save.
If the Walers do disappear, will you feel any responsibility for it?
No, none in the wide world. Like it or not, we can't live with the wild horse. Not any longer. We've done it for 50-odd years and we just can't do it anymore.
A glimmer of hope for the Walers. We've heard that Kerry Jarvis did manage to buy her Walers from the Alice Springs sale yards, and the property owners have promised that if they can, they will sell her any Walers they trap.
Hello, I'm Liz Hayes. Thanks for watching. To keep up with the latest from 60 Minutes Australia, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also download the 9 Now app for full episodes and other exclusive 60 Minutes content.